I saw him 5 days later at the VMAs and it was all love. So it's just like, I almost wish he had come in there on that shit because I kind of lost like a little respect for the sentiment of the verse. If it's really fuck everybody, then it needs to be fuck everybody. It just can't be halfway for the sake of the people.
It used to be fuck that nigga, but now it's Pearl. Fuck everybody.
What do you say me for?
I watch him pander with them backhanded compliments.
How many people think Kendrick Lamar is one of the greatest to ever touch microphone? Dreamville, y'all love Kendrick Lamar, correct? As do I.
Put their head on the Cuban link as a monument.
When you think of some of the most legendary runs that a single rapper has had in a single year, many of you will probably turn back to Tupac in 1996. Shortly after being released from jail, Tupac gave us his legendary double-disc album, All Eyes on Me, and after his tragic passing later in the year, his legacy lived on with what many consider his best album, Don Columinati, The 7-Day Theory.
I got advice from my father, all he told me was this, nigga, get off your ass if you plan to be rich.
You might also turn to 1998 and think of DMX dropping two classic #1 albums back-to-back in the same year and performing in front of 200,000 people at Woodstock. Or you might think of 2002, when Eminem gave us one of the highest-selling albums of all time with The Eminem Show, along with the #1 hit Lose Yourself, and one of the highest-grossing hip-hop movies of all time with 8 Mile. Or you could flip a year later and look at his protege 50 Cent, whose debut album Get Rich or Die Trying made an impact scary enough to have Jay-Z warn his entire label to step out of the way while 50 Cent reigned over the culture. Maybe you'd skip a few years later to 2008, when Lil Wayne sold 1 million copies in the first week with his magnum opus, The Carter 3. However, whatever year or rapper that comes to mind, I'd like to ask you this. Have any of these artists had the impact or the accolades that Kendrick Lamar has received in 2024? Numbers, bars, impact, praise, accomplishments. We have seen Kendrick check every box this year, and if you doubt for a second that this was one of the most supernatural runs that a rapper has ever had, then stick around till the end of the video. However, the craziest part is that if you take it back all the way to the beginning of 2024, then you'll remember that this year was shaping up to be one of Kendrick's quietest years yet. In fact, people anticipated his cousin Baby Keem's upcoming project more than they did the next Kendrick Lamar album. See, in January 2024, we were approaching the second year that we hadn't heard from Kendrick since Mr. Morale. And given the long break that he took between Damn and Mr. Morale, many of us only assumed it might be even longer till we get the next Kendrick album this time around, given the fact that Mr. Morale showed us Kendrick had a lot of healing to do mentally and had grown comfortable in his spot in hip-hop and the silence and peace that he now protects, even ending his song Savior, a song where he declared to the world that he is not indeed hip-hop savior by rapping, and they like to wonder where I've been, protecting my soul in the valley of silence. So while Drake and J. Cole were giving us project after feature after hit record, arguing for who was the hottest MC, is it K. Dot, Aubrey, or Cole, who is the top guy in the big three, Kendrick was seemingly protecting his peace and privacy by dropping out of the battle for Best MC and instead battling to better his mental health. But to many people's surprise, we actually did hear from Kendrick very early on in the year. He previewed a brand new record at the Chanel show at Paris Fashion Week way back in January of 2024. This was the first time we heard from Kendrick since Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers in 2022, aside from a feature that he did on a Beyonce song in 2023, where he ironically foreshadowed a lot of 2024's events by rapping, "Truthfully, I be lying in my rap songs cause I always fail to mention that I'd slap homie. His career didn't come with no life insurance. Hope his day one fans got some facts on them." But now we're in January of 2024, and the energy that Kendrick came with on the record that he premiered at the Chanel fashion show was the farthest thing from aggressive. It featured Kendrick singing over jazzy, blues-fueled production, with the lyrics talking about Kendrick being held in a strange spiritual hold and feeling softened. The preview didn't do much to excite fans for new Kendrick music, with fans on Reddit saying that Kendrick sounds like he's only been awake for 5 minutes, or other fans defending the softer performance by saying, something about that is so sick though. Like, being bored while you record a sick song just drips with swag. But being bored is the furthest from how you describe previous Kendrick music. So with the softened spiritual hold that Kendrick described was encompassing him, and the vulnerability displayed on Mr. Morale, many fans were wondering what direction was Kendrick gonna go in next. Around the same time, Kendrick shared a selfie on Instagram, and just to give you guys a little bit of an idea of how the sentiment was over Kendrick Lamar in January of 2024, one fan commented on Kendrick's selfie saying, "Zero aura. And y'all trying to tell me he's a bigger artist than Carti?" But the strangest comment came in February of 2024 under one of Joe Budden's YouTube videos. For whatever reason, way back in February of 2024, something made me screenshot this comment. It said, "Kendrick be chilling. J. Cole is amazing, but it's levels. Nobody wants Kendrick to act up again. Enjoy the peace." And with this comment being made on February 28th, 2024, it gave the rap world exactly 22 days to continue living in that peace. Because on March 22nd, 2024, Future and Metro Boomin gave us this. This was the first time in over 10 years that it felt like hip-hop had its back against the wall. The only time that rappers were this shaken up before this was from Kendrick Lamar himself on his Control verse way back in 2013. But back then, he was simply calling out everyone in hip-hop, saying that when fans think of rap, he wants to be first on their list. But now, in 2024, it was clear that Kendrick had a vengeance for one very particular individual. On his 2023 collaboration with Beyonce, Kendrick rapped, "Beyonce, yes, America has a problem. Geeked up, choosing love, while they choose violence." But now in 2024, on this Future record, Kendrick raps, "My temperament bipolar, I choose violence." And this was obviously a response to Drake and J. Cole's song First Person Shooter, where they declare the big three being themselves and Kendrick, but also hinting at the fact that they're at the top of that big three list, with Drake and Cole doing the Spider-Man meme against each other, and Cole saying that he feels like Muhammad Ali. So it's no surprise that Cole got caught in the crossfires when he heard Kendrick rapped, "F the big three, is just big me." And I think along with Not Like Us, which we will touch on shortly, Like That will go down as one of the most impactful records of this generation, marking the return of a boogeyman ready for war and a symbol of hip-hop's savior emerging from his hideaway to reclaim the throne. The song instantly went #1, it shook up the entire rap game, and the craziest part is that Kendrick released this while Drake was still on tour, just wrapping up his segment with J. Cole, with Cole being replaced by Drake's mentor, Lil Wayne. The irony of all three of these rappers, each ending up with their own separate conflict with Kendrick this year, and his biggest rival, Drake, having to go out on stage night after night, pretending like this song had no effect on him. But it was obvious, seemingly from the beginning, that regardless of whether or not Drake thought he could beat Kendrick in a rap battle, the thought of what was to come had Drake shook. This is him leaving an after party the night that Like That dropped. Earphones in his ear, you could only imagine he's replaying that verse over and over again. And given the look on his face, I mean, that's the look you give when you just lost your dog or something. He looked like he aged 20 years from this battle before it even begun. I mean, I could only imagine he was replaying those bars, "and your best work is a light pack, Prince outlived Mike Jack," over and over again in those headphones, just pondering on what the hell he was about to say and what the hell was about to happen next.
Drake is glued to the phone because he can't believe the unmitigated audacity of Kung Fu Kenny to attack the GOAT in the 9th inning. After that, just gave us back-to-back tours, back-to-back-to-back albums. That had been on a world tour. He finally took a break. And now you want to diss the GOAT?
And Drake would go on to do a couple shows, each day passing with no response, and the world wondering, was Drake gonna pull the trigger and officially kick off, for the first time since Jay-Z and Nas, a battle between hip-hop's two largest titans? And like Kendrick rapped on Hood Politics, where he reflected on his conversation with Jay-Z, saying, "I resolved inside that private hall while sitting down with Jay. He said it's funny how one verse can F up the game." That statement never held more weight than in March of 2024. Drake continued his tour, giving motivational speeches throughout it, saying that his back was straight, he's 10 toes down, he's ready for whatever. And meanwhile, Meanwhile, to the world's surprise, Kendrick Lamar's former friend, Jermaine Cole, was really the first one to kick off this entire battle by dissing Kendrick Lamar all throughout his record 7-minute drill and seemingly shifting the dynamics from being a 20v1 between Drake versus Kendrick, Metro, Future, The Weeknd, Rick Ross, A$AP Rocky, and more. Kendrick was now on the defense, having to go up against two of hip-hop's biggest players with Drake and J. Cole. But looking back on like that, it makes you question, was it Kendrick's intention all along to have J. Cole be dragged into this beef? And how many stocks did he really have in stock for J. Cole? On 7-minute drill, Cole dissed Kendrick's entire catalog, calling To Pimp a Butterfly a snooze fest, saying Mr. Morale was tragic, pinpointing Damn as Kendrick's commercial peak, but claiming that Kendrick had now fallen behind and J. Cole had now caught up and was ready for war. But it's crazy how things could change just a good week later. J. Cole gets on stage at his Dreamville festival, the biggest crowd he's arguably ever performed in front of, and backs out of this beef, declaring he wants no smoke with Kendrick and thinks Kendrick is one of the greatest to ever touch a mic.
Trying to find a little angle and downplay his greatness. I want to say right now tonight, how many people think Kendrick Lamar is one of the greatest to ever touch microphone? Dreamville, y'all love Kendrick Lamar, correct? As do I. So I just want to come up here and be like, that was the lamest, goofiest shit. Pray that Kendrick really didn't feel no way. And if he did, my chin out. Take your best shot. I'm going to take that in the chin, boy. Do what you do. It's love.
Now, I know that this video is meant to highlight Kendrick's moves and music from this year, but at this point in the story, we're only in April. Kendrick has only released a 40-second verse and has already had one of the biggest rappers of this generation pull a move we've never seen in hip-hop before by backing out of this battle with Kendrick and apologizing to him on a public stage. And now it was Drake's turn. He was all alone. All eyes were on him. We're now in April of 2024, and on the afternoon of April 19th, we finally get Drake's first official response with push-ups. From the very moment that Kendrick released Like That, I had been questioning, what did Drake truly stand to gain by even participating in this beef? He could have pretended like that verse was nothing but a desperate cry from Kendrick to pick a fight for no reason. And yeah, he would have looked like a sensitive rapper, but he already was a sensitive rapper. And with the sensitivity Drake displayed during his beef with Pusha T, he should have been calculated enough to realize that he could not afford for similar events to transpire for a second time around, especially with a much more globally renowned tactical rapper like Kendrick. And besides, if Drake did come out swinging, what was he going to say to Kendrick that would grant him the unanimous win from the culture? Could he throw out the fact that he brought Kendrick on his first arena tour, or the fact that Kendrick spent the last 7 years in therapy, working on himself, healing, only to come out earlier this year in 2024 seemingly on a more violent, destructive path than ever before? And with that being the case, what healing did Kendrick really do throughout those years that warranted a 5-year hiatus in silence? But instead of that, Drake chose to go the route of distracting everyone from him versus Kendrick and turning it into a 20v1. He went at Future, Rick Ross, Metro, The Weeknd, and his bars against Kendrick simply fell flat, poking fun at Kendrick's short stature, or the fact that his label took 50% of the profits of his record sales, even though Birdman probably took a lot more of Drake's profits, and Drake is now engulfed in a legal battle between his record label UMG. Or he tried comparing Kendrick's success and impact to that of SZA, Travis Scott, and 21 Savage, stating that Kendrick isn't in the big three because all three of the aforementioned names have him quote-unquote wiped down. Regardless, this push-ups track and the tailor-made track that quickly followed were seemingly enough to keep Kendrick in hiding for the next 17 days.
Kendrick on the clock. Kendrick is all the way on the clock.
Kendrick, where you at?
The boogeyman's coming.
Which boogeyman?
There's only one boogeyman. I hear this whole, you're on the clock, you're on the clock, you're on the clock.
Now, neither one of them is going to make me look at somebody away because they're taking their time. Drake did what he had to do, and it looks like he's continuing to do it even with the bots game he's playing. And Kendrick is playing Silent Assassin, Kung Fu Kenny games.
Oh my God.
Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure?
The Kendrick boogeyman Lamar.
Day 17, he rose. He showed a pulse.
It took me 17 days to figure the Drake out like Kendrick Lamar. Hey, yo,
Last
last one.
And while the world thought that Kendrick's silence was him simply backing out of this battle, it obviously turned out to be the exact opposite. Kendrick released a 6-minute theatrical takedown of every aspect of Drake's personality, reputation, legacy, upbringing, family life, all while simultaneously warning him for what was to come. On Push-Ups, Drake painted himself as the Thanos of hip-hop, battling multiple rappers all at once, while on Euphoria, Kendrick let the world know that those superpowers were getting neutralized. Drake was spiraling, and this was not in fact a 20v1, but it was a 1v20 between Kendrick and all of Drake's ghostwriters. Kendrick called out everything from Drake backing out of his beef with Pusha T and redirecting it into a beef with the seemingly unconfrontational Pharrell Williams. He criticized Drake's presence in his son's life, comparing his own parental skills to Drake's, and while he stated that Drake did not teach his son proper morals, discipline, and values, he emphasized that it was due to the fact that Drake himself was completely void of integrity, authenticity, good intentions, and a good influence on the culture. While Euphoria wasn't exactly the nail in the coffin, it set up the foundation for the world to paint Drake in the light of being an immoral actor who brought a poisonous presence to the culture, who did not belong in the very landscape that he built his entire career upon. And with the hope of gaining cultural acceptance, Kendrick exclaimed that Drake not only garnered immense hatred for the way that he walked, talked, dressed, and more from Kendrick himself, but it was actually how the entire culture was truly feeling. Euphoria put Drake in the scope, with Kendrick ending off the song rapping, "If you take it there, I'm taking it further. That's something you don't want to do." But sure enough, fast forward to May 2024, and in the first 4 days of that month, we witnessed Kendrick piece apart his opponent with the most calculated chess moves we've ever witnessed in a rap battle. Not only did Kendrick decode Drake's personality in a much more scathing and calculated way than Drake did to Kendrick, not only did Kendrick play Drake's game better than him by dropping songs at a much more rapid pace and making a much larger impact on the charts, so much so that Drake had to sue his record label for defamation, claiming that they over-promoted Kendrick's records. But the most incredible part about Kendrick's entire performance is that he seemingly distracted the entire world from any allegation Drake made against him. After Euphoria, Drake quickly snapped back a couple days later with Family Matters. On that record contained allegations so brutal that if they ever come out as being true, it would destroy any artist's career, no matter how big or beloved they are. Drake came out and claimed that Kendrick not only lied to the world about his relationship with his fiancée, Drake not only dismantled all of the integrity and loyalty amongst Kendrick's inner circle, claiming that his longtime friend and manager Dave Free had an affair with his fiancée Whitney, and Kendrick was now raising his manager and fiancée's kid as if it was his own. But worst of all, darkest of all, by far the darkest allegation in this whole battle was Drake claimed that Kendrick physically assaulted his fiancée. Now yes, being a PDF file is definitely just as bad, if not worse, than being a woman abuser. But again, we haven't gotten to Not Like Us yet. Those allegations haven't boiled to the surface just yet. At this point, Drake drops Family Matters, accusing Kendrick of the most heinous acts of violence and betrayal amongst his family dynamic. And before the world can sit down and digest every bar that Drake just rapped, every attack, every allegation he just revealed, with the snap of a finger, Kendrick made the world completely forget Family Matters ever existed, pulling the arguably smartest move that has ever been done in a rap battle, dropping Meet the Grams 30 minutes after Drake released Family Matters. Talking to each one of Drake's family members, Kendrick starts the song off writing a letter to Adonis, painting Drake again as an absent father who does not teach his son the proper values of a man, and instead offering to be Adonis's role model due to the fact that Drake is distracted from raising his son and distracted by the toxicity of being a famous pop star, engaging in the escort business, code switching, abusing substances, mistreating Adonis's mother, and taking disrespect throughout his entire career. Then he speaks to both Drake's mother and father, painting Drake in an even more brutal light, accusing him of being the hip-hop Harvey Weinstein, hypersexualizing black women, the very audience that made up the largest segment of Drake's early fan base, keeping S-offenders on his payroll, being a predator, a manipulator, and such a horrible person that Drake's parents should regret ever even conceiving him. Now, I will give Drake this. In my opinion, the one false step that Kendrick took throughout this entire battle was on the third verse of Meet the Grams, where he pens a letter to Drake's alleged 11-year-old daughter, who Kendrick claimed Drake was hiding, like his son, from the entire world. Now, I say this was a false step for two reasons. Number one, there has been no concrete evidence that has come out to prove that Drake indeed does have a daughter. Number two, and this is more a subjective take, I know that in rap battles, lies can be tossed. It doesn't necessarily take away from the credibility of that rapper's performance. However, to me, this beef reached its low point when both artists were throwing allegations against one another without any concrete evidence to back it up. Kendrick did a good enough job decoding Drake's personality to a T without having to stoop to Drake's low level by creating narratives with no factual evidence to back them up. But again, everything about this record alone did the job perfectly to not only decode Drake's personality, but also distract the entire public from the bombshell of a diss track that Drake put out 30 minutes before with Family Matters. Everything from the artwork of Meet the Grams with the Ozempic pills and all of the leaked alleged personal belongings of Drake that were featured on that cover, to the incredible structure of that record, with each verse being a personal letter from Kendrick to one of Drake's family matters, where he addresses their dynamic with Drake specifically, while simultaneously critiquing every flaw in Drake and his relationship with them. This was more than enough to make every single person watching this beef carefully quickly stop what they were doing and sit with this record in absolute shock and horror, and witness Kendrick pick every ounce of Drake's personality apart, menacingly painting him as this irredeemable figure with flaws as shameful as being a degenerate, alcoholic, gambling addict, to as brutal as being a predatory, surgically enhanced, perverted, absent father who not only failed to raise his son and mistreated his son's mother, but simultaneously hid a daughter from the entire world for 11 years. Whether that was true or not, the damage was done. Kendrick took complete control of the narrative, clobbering over Family Matters, which Drake considered his red button, his nuke that would end Kendrick and all the rest of the rappers that he was going up against. In the span of 30 minutes, that diss record and every allegation made within it was completely neutralized. And while the world recovered from the brutality of Meet the Grams, Kendrick refused to even let his own diss record breathe, as on the next morning of May the 4th, Kendrick played Drake's game better than he could ever play it. You could find a million breakdowns of Not Like Us and why the subject matter within it has caused irreparable damage to Drake's career, but I want to take you guys through a couple specific reasons as to why that song was one of the greatest records and moves ever made in a rap battle. Firstly, as we saw before, after Drake released Push Ups, everyone doubted Kendrick due to his silence. Even though it took Drake longer to respond with Push Ups after Kendrick released Like That than it took Kendrick to respond to Push Ups with Euphoria, Like That to Push Ups was 22 days, Push Ups to Euphoria was only 17. Maybe because of the prior long leap of silence Kendrick took between Damn and Mr. Morale, many people took Kendrick's silence between Push Ups and Euphoria for weakness.
I don't know. I don't think Kendrick's cooking up. It don't take him 3-4 weeks. I think that's over. It don't take 3 or 4 weeks.
Also, possibly due to the new precedent that Drake set in his beef with Meek Mill, where he went back to back, the internet now concocted this narrative that rappers had to be on some sort of time clock during a rap battle. It's like they forgot that Ether and Takeover were released months in between each other. But because of how quickly Drake came with back-to-back, it was no longer about how poignant your diss records were, but instead about how quickly you could concoct them. And with that being the narrative before Euphoria, after Not Like Us, Drake and all of his minions were begging Kendrick to quit. Drake's affiliates went from saying, "Tell that boy to drop," but he knows he can't because he doesn't have anything, to Drake unofficially bowing out of this beef on the Heart Part 6, saying that he knows Kendrick's going to release something 30 minutes later, and Drake essentially was done.
You got 10 more records to drop, and you go and drop the West Coast one. I would like that one. That would be some shit I could dance to if you wasn't tripling down on some whole other bullshit. I'm happy I can motivate you.
Meet the Grams put an end to the time clock narrative, but Not Like Us put an end to the battle completely. The narrative was no longer how quickly will Drake respond to Not Like Us, but instead, how will Drake ever recover from Not Like Us? Not only did Kendrick play Drake's game in terms of going back to back in a quick amount of time, but he did so with a hit song that will stand the test of time for generations to come. Even rappers who were defending Drake throughout most of this beef had to admit that Not Like Us will grow to be a generational timeless classic. Fat Joe compared it to a song like In the Club or Lean Back, with quotables that fans will be singing for years to come. And 50 Cent, one of Drake's biggest defenders, justified Drake's lawsuit by stating that Drake needs to do whatever he can in his power to stop Not Like Us from being performed on a stage as big as the Super Bowl and introducing a record that catchy to an even wider global audience. We already went through in this video a lot of the ways that Kendrick picked apart Drake's character, a lot of which were further exemplified and emphasized on Not Like Us, with Kendrick devoting an entire verse to Drake code switching and colonizing when he runs to Atlanta in search of a few dollars, or his predatory tendencies and maltreatment of women by obviously accusing him of being a PDF file and also mistreating women like Serena Williams. But what made these personal attacks against Drake that much more poignant, harsher, reputation damaging, and memorable was not the fact that Kendrick was saying anything new on Not Like Us that he didn't already say on Euphoria or Meet the Grams. It was because of the fact that on Not Like Us, every diss was quotable. When you think of that song, you think of Trying to Strike a Chord, but it's probably A minor. You think of Certified Lover Boy, Certified PDF File. You think of the ending where he chants Freaky Guy, He is 69 God, or OV Ho. Those are the lyrics that Fat Joe emphasized are quotable enough that people will be singing them for years to come. The same way people sing Go Shawty, It's Your Birthday off of 50 Cent in the Club, they're now going to be singing Let Me Hear You Say OV Ho.
You look like Drake. I feel like a new. I feel like one.
Not cell block one, done.
So let me go cell block one.
I'm getting off of here because at the end of the day,
you look like Drake.
It was the Is That a World Tour, Your Girls Tour on steroids. He played Drake's game, but did it way better than Drake ever could, giving us quotables that directly accuse Drake of the most heinous allegations imaginable in the most quotable way. Another extremely calculated aspect of this song is the fact that this is the first time we ever heard Kendrick on a DJ Mustard beat. Both hail from California, both rep LA to the core, both of their sounds are symbolic and synonymous with West Coast hip-hop, but their worlds have somehow never collided. Kendrick making his most successful diss record a West Coast banger was the most calculated approach he could take after constantly accusing Drake of being a fraud, an actor, a colonizer of other people's sounds with no true identity or integrity of his own. Not Like Us was a line drawn in the sand between not just Kendrick, but the entire culture. For the first time in Drake's career, he was viewed as the odd man out, a man who was leeching off the sound that wasn't his. And this horrible representation of Drake's character was executed on production and sound that was inherent to Kendrick's very own identity. He gave us the biggest hit of the year that was congruent to the essence of his culture, with the entire song emphasizing that Drake is absolutely not a part of or welcome to this culture. And while Drake focused on responding to the allegations of him being a PDF file, I think he missed the bigger picture, which is that Kendrick made the entire world realize that Drake is simply an outsider who doesn't give back to the very culture that he has taken so much from. And while yes, this is obviously not close to as bad as being a PDF file, aside from some very deranged behavior on stage with a 17-year-old and some even more deranged texts with a young Millie Bobby Brown, there was no concrete evidence or accusations made against Drake for being a PDF file. But there was, in fact, countless instances of Drake being an outsider to the culture and not doing nearly as much as Kendrick to shed light on or try to solve problems within the culture. And in the months following this beef, Kendrick put on a masterclass of how to properly uplift the culture, the people, and the neighborhood who played an integral role in uplifting you. Many people were questioning how Kendrick would celebrate his victory once the dust had settled. While he teased having more diss tracks in the cut, Kendrick instead opted to follow Law 47 of the 48 Laws of Powers, which is do not go past the mark you aim for. In victory, learn when to stop. In the heat of victory, arrogance and overconfidence can push you past the goal you had aimed for, and by going too far, you make more enemies than you defeat. Do not allow success to go to your head. There is no substitute for strategy and careful planning. Set a goal, and when you reach it, stop. And Kendrick's goal for the rest of the year has seemingly been to uplift his home state of California. His first appearance after the beef was a surprise one at the Compton College graduation for 2024, where he made a speech to the graduating students, letting them know that Compton isn't just where he's from, but also embodies who he is.
Seeing y'all out here is not only a representation of the world, but it's a representation of me. When I walk out in these cities and these countries, I could be proud and say, this is where I'm from. You know, y'all had a lot of hardship, not only in your house, in your communities, but most importantly, within yourself. And that's the toughest thing to overcome. And we still growing day by day, brick by brick.
Later that month, in June of 2024, Kendrick announced his first live performance since the beef ended. But this wasn't just any live performance. This wasn't even a Kendrick Lamar show. This was a representation of the greatness of his city. Spanning over 3 hours long, the concert featured over 25 different West Coast artists throughout the event, with sets from DJ Head and DJ Mustard, bringing out various guests like Ty Dolla $ign, Dom Kennedy, Steve Lacy, Roddy Ricch, YG, Tyler the Creator, Tommy the Clown, and much more. Kendrick decided to host the show in a smaller venue in Inglewood rather than the massive Staples Center in LA. Him saying on Euphoria that his hatred for Drake was representative of how the culture was feeling was never more obvious than seeing who was in attendance in the audience of this show. Multiple massive A-list celebrities, including The Weeknd, LeBron James, Drake's former friends DeMar DeRozan, James Harden, Drake's former girlfriend SZA was in attendance in disguise, his former collaborator Rick Ross, his previous largest arch nemesis had his daughter North West in the crowd at the show. And aside from the massive crowd of celebrities and the celebrity-filled set list, this show was a spectacular victory lap for Kendrick for multiple reasons. Firstly, it broke the record for the most minutes watched of any Amazon Music video production, as it was being streamed live on Prime Video and Twitch. All of the artists who took the stage at the concert saw significant increases in their streams, with Kendrick helping boost the popularity of the West Coast artists around him. So for all you saying that, people were doing Kendrick a favor by, popping out at the pop-out, really, it was Kendrick doing them a favor. But the most charitable initiative to come out of this live event was the fact that Kendrick and his PG Lang Corporation took $200,000 of proceeds that the show generated and donated it to 20 different charities and community initiatives that were based in Kendrick's hometown of Los Angeles. The show was narrated by Bay Area legend E40, and the moment Kendrick took the stage, pandemonium ensued. He opened up his set with the track that started it all, Euphoria. With fans chanting the song word for word, which is incredible considering it's a 6-minute bar-fueled breakdown of Drake's persona. But the arena erupted as the crowd chanted, "What is it, the plane?" and screamed as Kendrick changed the lyrics up about midway through the performance of the song, where he spoke to Drake directly, telling him to give Tupac's ring back and he might get a little respect.
Give me Tupac ring back and I might give you a little respect. Remember, hey, top dog.
Another great chess move from Kendrick throughout this beef was the magnifying glass that he put on Drake's disrespect of West Coast legend Tupac Shakur. Kendrick here was referencing the $2 million ring that Drake purchased from Tupac's estate, but this wasn't the only interaction Drake had with Tupac's estate. As you guys probably know, he released the song Tailor Made Freestyle, which featured AI Tupac vocals, which caused Tupac's estate to threaten to sue Drake if he didn't take the song down. Kendrick rapping bars like, "Somebody had told me that you got a ring, I'm ready to double the wage, I'd rather do that than let a Canadian guy make Pac turn in his grave," again emphasized to the world that Drake was an outsider, and even the thought of owning any memorabilia attached to the culture that he's not a part of would make the legends of the culture roll in their grave in disgust. Kendrick continued taunting Drake with legends of the culture by bringing out Dr. Dre to introduce Kendrick's first performance of the song Not Like Us.
I'm gonna just need a moment of silence for this. I see dead people.
But Kendrick didn't just perform this song one time. In fact, he performed it a total of 6 times. the first time only performing the first verse, stopping it after he said A minor, and just dancing, funny enough, doing Drake's signature Hotline Bling dance as the crowd erupted chanting A minor. And as he continued performing the record, he brought out more and more people, from the song's producer DJ Mustard to his former Black Hippie Collective, to Drake's former friends YG, DeMar DeRozan, Roddy Ricch, and many other West Coast legends. But as the stage filled up, Kendrick spoke to the crowd saying, y'all not gonna let anyone disrespect West Coast legends, right? And by the fifth performance of the record, Kendrick made the most special move of all, bringing on stage several members of different Los Angeles street gangs, some who rivaled one another, to put their differences aside on stage and dance and celebrate Kendrick's victory. Kendrick stopped the performance to capture the historic moment with a photograph declaring the pop-out as unity at its finest. He said, "We done lost a lot of homies to this music stuff, a lot of homies to this street stuff, and for all of us to be on this stage together, unity from each side of LA Crips, Bloods, Pyrus, this stuff is special, man. Everybody on this stage got fallen soldiers, but we're right here, right now, celebrating all of them. All talented individuals. This doesn't have anything to do with the song at this point. This doesn't have nothing to do with no back and forth records. It has everything to do with this moment right here. That's what this stuff is about, bringing us all together." And that moment and photo, in my opinion, captured the peak of everything Kendrick Lamar was attempting to achieve in his most successful year yet. Unity, peace, prosperity, and love. And the city definitely agreed, with that photo being plastered on various different billboards, one on Rosecrans Avenue in Compton, and another outside the Kia Center in Inglewood, the same arena Kendrick had hosted the pop-out concert in. And I know that Kendrick emphasized that the pop-out concert wasn't about a back and forth, it wasn't about a diss record, it wasn't about Drake, but on a side note, I just thought it was hilarious that Drake's biggest defender, DJ Academics, was watching the show live and could not hold himself back from letting the world know that he knew every lyric.
Playing with extensions, you messed up the lyrics, by the way. Only you like being famous, so swag nigga. I'm surprised you wanted that feature request. I know we got some shit to address. Dance, wave with my hands, it won't be no threat. I know they call you the boy.
And as great as the pop-out was, the performances and the victory lap wasn't over just there. Firstly, Kendrick united the city once again with the Not Like Us music video, shooting scenes outside the Compton courthouse, in Compton staples like the diner Tam's Burger. He had Drake's fragile op, DeMar DeRozan, dancing throughout the music video. And while he paid no mind to all the allegations Drake made throughout Push-Ups and Family Matters, he put a lot of them to rest with this music video alone. Drake hinted at label issues between Kendrick and Top Dog Entertainment. Kendrick featured the co-founders of the label and all of his label mates in the music video. Drake accused Kendrick's manager, Dave Free, of having a child with Kendrick's fiancée, Whitney. Kendrick not only featured Dave Free in the music video and had him direct it, but also featured both Whitney and his children in a photo op where you can clearly see the resemblance in facial features between Kendrick and his son. And as Kendrick chanted, "Freaky guy, he is 69 God," and "OV ho," Kendrick and Whitney were dancing throughout the music video, seemingly putting every rumor to rest that there was any sort of trouble in paradise. The music video went on to break multiple records, being the most viewed music video for a hip-hop song in the first hour on YouTube in history. And I failed to mention that throughout this entire time, Kendrick has racked up multiple Billboard top 5 hits throughout the year, all being diss songs at Drake, and 2 number ones with Like That and Not Like Us. As a matter of fact, Not Like Us broke various records on Spotify that, ironically, Drake previously held, as prior to Not Like Us's release, God's Plan, Drake's record, held the title for most streams in a single day for a hip-hop song, as well as the fastest hip-hop song to reach 100 million streams on Spotify, then 200 million streams, then 300 million streams, then 400 million streams. And yeah, Kendrick broke all those records. And don't forget, we're still just in July. Q4 of 2024 has yet to be hit, and Kendrick already has 2 number ones, the most viewed live music event in Twitch and Amazon Prime history. He broke some of Drake's greatest accomplishments on Spotify, united the rivaling gangs in his hometown, while simultaneously using the proceeds of that show to invest in small businesses and community initiatives within his hometown. And now we get to September, where the party officially dies. While Drake and J. Cole not only professed that they were the big three on first-person shooter, they also claimed that their link-up was as big as the Super Bowl. In fact, when Kendrick Lamar released his verse on Like That, Drake and J. Cole were on a tour together titled The Big as the Super Bowl Tour. And irony was sure to have the last laugh, as in September of 2024, Kendrick announced that he would be the halftime performer at the 2025 Super Bowl. If you needed any further proof that this was the biggest year that a rapper has had in years, arguably decades, then look no further at the fact that arguably the last person to have as big of a year as Kendrick did in 2024 was Lil Wayne in 2008. Lil Wayne was never chosen to be the halftime performer at the Super Bowl, no matter how big he was in his prime. And given the fact that Kendrick was about to do the show in Wayne's hometown, he got online to say that the snub broke him. So let me ask you, have you ever seen a rapper have such a prolific year that it creates a ripple effect of starting one of the biggest hip-hop beefs in history, causes one of the biggest rappers in the world in J. Cole to apologize for even thinking of participating and going up against said rapper, seeing said rapper's former idols break down at the fact that their protege is getting global opportunities that they were never able to get in their prime, all the while said rapper has put out the most commercially successful diss record of all time, while simultaneously dismantling the reputation of the most commercially successful rapper of all time in Drake, all while remaining authentic to himself, uniting his city, uplifting his hometown, staying silent on social media, and strictly letting the music talk. And while the music talked, Kendrick did take the opportunity in October 2024 to explain the true meaning behind Not Like Us. He said, "Not like us is the energy of who I am, the type of man I represent. Now, if you identify with the man that I represent, this man has morals, he has values, he believes in something, and he stands on something." And he showed the world this with his September 2024 release of the Untitled track, where he declares that it's time to watch the party die and turn a new chapter in a culture that has now taken down what Kendrick believes to be the most toxic intruder within it. Now that Kendrick has shown the world that Drake is an outsider who has polluted the values, integrity, and morality of the culture, he now has the torch and the ability to rebuild it from the ground up. And he did just that. But before he did just that, one more prophecy from this beef had to emerge. But this time, it was actually Drake predicting the future. Because on Family Matters, when he rapped, "Kendrick just opened his mouth, someone go hand him a Grammy right now," the Grammys apparently were listening, as they nominated Kendrick 7 times for the 2025 Grammy Awards, which are going to take place a week before the Super Bowl, with Not Like Us being the only hip-hop song in the categories for Song of the Year and Record of the Year. And I could be mistaken, but I believe this is the very first diss track to ever make an appearance as a nominee at the Grammy Awards. Kendrick also took one of Drake's records away from him, as they both held the title for third most nominated rapper in history at the Grammys, but with the 7 new nominations, Kendrick broke the tie and beat out the number of nominations that Drake has had throughout his entire career. And yes, I know Drake retracted his music from the Grammy Awards, however, that was in the last few years. Drake has more than double the amount of albums that Kendrick does, so for Kendrick to have more nominations than Drake definitely says something to the quality of both of their music. And shortly after the Grammy nominations are announced, we get the biggest bomb Kendrick has dropped throughout the entire year. This has really been the year of Kendrick previewing music. Obviously, way back in January, he gave us that snippet at the Chanel fashion show. Then, in the Not Like Us music video, he previewed his song Squabble Up. And right before he put out GNX, he gave us the album's trailer. He gave us a brand new record where he declared that his Gemini twin was coming out of the woodworks. While at the beginning of the year, he previewed a song where he said he felt a softened spirit. By the end of the year, he declared that his more aggressive Gemini traits were now peeking their head at the surface. And I've already done a full breakdown of GNX, so we're not going to go into too much detail on the specifics of the album, but rather the accomplishments that it's garnered. Not that it matters, but it was the most critically acclaimed album of 2024. Kendrick occupied the entire top 5 of the Billboard charts in its first week of release. It has the highest number of streams in a single week on Spotify for an album with 15 tracks or less. It gave Kendrick his 3rd number 1 of the year, making him the first rapper in history to debut 3 separate songs at number 1 on the Billboard charts in a single calendar year. It also broke the record for being the first rap album to have every single song from the tracklist stay on the Billboard charts for its first 3 weeks of release. It's getting more streams currently in its 4th week of release than Drake's most recent project, For All the Dogs, was getting in its 4th week of release. And that's important because Drake's For All the Dogs had almost double the amount of songs that GNX had, making it twice as easy to outstream GNX. However, GNX is now outstreaming it. And the most important part of all is that Kendrick put on various West Coast artists on this album who have never had a Billboard charting single before. Most of them hovered around 50,000 to 100,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And thanks to their placement on this project, they've now generated a massive new set of eyeballs onto all of their music. We've never seen Drake do something like this for Toronto artists, but this move does mirror a lot of other rappers in their primes, like 50 Cent, who at the height of his career put on various different artists of his G-Unit label like Lloyd Banks, Tony Yayo, and Young Buck, or even Drake's mentor Lil Wayne, who at the height of his career after selling 1 million in the first week with the Carter 3, put his stardom aside to shine light on his Young Money artists like Nicki Minaj, Tyga, and Drake himself. Kendrick shining a spotlight on emerging talent within his city is very reminiscent to the moves that a lot of greats make at the height of their careers, using their platforms to shine light on smaller talent. However, Kendrick has no financial incentive to do so, as none of these artists are signed to him. On the surface, it's seemingly strictly to uplift his city, like many of the other actions he's taken throughout his legendary run this year. And he capped off the year in December by showing even more love to his city by appearing at the TDE Christmas concert, putting on a show for a bunch of kids at the Nickerson Gardens housing complex, the same complex that Kendrick himself used to rap battle in. He also announced that he'd be one of the first rappers in history to embark on a stadium tour, visiting Drake's hometown of Toronto for 2 nights in a row, performing for over 150,000 people, really emphasizing that the best is yet to come, with GNX possibly being part 1 to a double album. He's given us many hints about that throughout the year, with the Grammys coming a week before the Super Bowl in February of 2025, and Kendrick going right from the Super Bowl stage to the stadium stages, traveling North America with SZA on their tour. It seems like while 2024 was beyond legendary for Kendrick, 2025 may only be greater. And to reflect on some of the numbers that Kendrick put up throughout this beef, Not Like Us in 6 months alone generated a staggering $15 million in revenue. Like That with Future Metro Boomin generated over $4 million in revenue. And Euphoria and Meet the Grams together generated almost $2 million in revenue in less than 6 months. To put it into perspective, Drake's 2 diss tracks, Family Matters and Push-Ups, only generated $2 million in total. But I don't think that's what's most important. I think the greatest thing to come out of this year, and why this was one of the best years for a rapper in hip-hop history, is because of the renaissance, if you want to call it that Kendrick Lamar has sparked throughout the moves that he's made throughout the course of this year. It's not just about people caring about bars again, or traditional sounding hip-hop songs being number 1 on the charts. It's more than that. They Not Like Us, Watching the Party Die, bars like It Used to Be F That Guy, but now it's plural, and all of Kendrick's actions this year show you that this run Kendrick's been on is much more than just strangling a goat, becoming the biggest rapper in the world, or selling a bunch of albums. Why? Because if that's all it came down to, then you could argue that Drake has done the same thing but on a larger scale way back in 2015. Drake strangled a hip-hop titan with a number 1 hit record that was also a diss record, back-to-back. In that same time period, he clocked in his first Billboard number 1 with One Dance and gave us 3 chart-topping Platinum Plus albums between If You're Reading This Is Too Late all the way up to Views. He did what Kendrick did this year way back in 2015, but did it in a much larger scale from a numbers perspective. And he continued his record-breaking reign of staying number 1 on the Billboard charts for the rest of the decade. So much so that Billboard themselves even awarded Drake with a trophy for being the artist of the decade. But amidst all this success, Drake still didn't feel like he had enough love, enough championing from the culture, enough praise for his work. And he's right. Drake didn't have the unanimous love and acclaim from the critics and the culture. Kendrick did.
Nothing was the same. I feel like maybe Kendrick's ascension at the time, was part of it, but I feel like it wasn't fully embraced as I thought it should have been.
Yeah, I don't know.
Drake had the continuous string of number ones, but he was never as cherished as a Jay-Z. He had the influence, but was never given the credit for it like a Lil Wayne or a Kanye West. And in Drake's eyes, this is because he's biracial and Canadian.
You're super successful, you're one of the best to ever do it, yet you still have this chip on your shoulder. You know, you have the line where you say you're black excellence, but it was come to you, it's not the same though. Why do you think that dark cloud is over your head?
I think I've been in a lot of rooms and just felt the other side of judgment, racial judgment sometimes, being light-skinned, you know, being Canadian, having people that I look up to and respect tell me that I can't identify with what's going on. Granted, I'm also not the most outspoken person when it comes to political issues.
And on the surface, you might hear Drake and say he's right. But then you look deeper and see that his Big Three counterpart, J. Cole, is also biracial and gets a lot more love from the culture than Drake does. And yeah, Drake's Canadian, but Nipsey Hussle's Ethiopian, and he's gotten more love in LA and America in general than the governor Gavin Newsom. I mean, even Mac Miller, a fellow Jew and full-on white rapper, came up making frat rap and still gets more love from hip-hop purists than Drake does. So is it really because he's a biracial Canadian? Is that why Kendrick says they are not alike? Or that he hates Drake and that he is not what the culture is feeling? I don't think it has anything to do with being Canadian or white or black. And I think Kendrick this year put on a masterclass at how to restore a sense of ethics, community, integrity, and care within the culture that was missing thanks to Drake's reign at the top. Drake commodified the genre. He made it okay and paved a way for rappers after him to develop extremely commercially successful careers by offering a very surface-level personality, no fight for different causes or for change in general, no drive to improve the state of the culture that is now paying them so handsomely, or at least striving to be a strong role model for the next generation. And it wasn't always like this. I hate to make this about Drake, but we're driving the point here. See, at the beginning, Drake always wanted more. He wanted the conscious fans that Kendrick or his idol Kanye West had. He wanted the unanimous love and number ones that his mentor Lil Wayne had. He wanted the legacy that a Jay-Z had. But the second he realized he would never be enough for purists to give him the same credit as all the aforementioned names, Drake abandoned the vulnerability, the family-oriented raps, the childhood stories, and exchanged it for repeated formulas of calculated hits designed to be background music in shopping malls and doom-scrolling TikTok reels. As much as we hear Drake on the radio, Drake in the malls, Drake in the clubs, we don't know who Drake truly is from his music. That's why Not Like Us cut so deep, because just like Drake's music, you hear it everywhere. But more importantly, it's shining a light on who Drake is as a human more than Drake ever has in his own music. Kendrick humanized Drake while simultaneously showing him why the culture will never have love for Drake the same way they do for Kendrick. Immediately after releasing the song, Kendrick went back to his hometown, brought the whole community out to shoot the music video, giving them the same experience he had witnessing Dr. Dre and Tupac shoot California Love in his hometown as a kid. He simultaneously organized an event dedicated to showcasing talent from the city and uniting rivaling neighborhood gangs that have never shared a stage in peace before in history. Then he proceeded to donate part of the earnings of that show to a bunch of local LA small businesses. Then he crafts an album riddled with his hometown sound and a bunch of LA emerging artists. So yeah, while it's cool to see that album go number one, or his Drake diss song break all the streaming records that Drake previously had, what's even greater to see is how Kendrick has funneled that success into new opportunities for his community. At the core, I don't believe it's about where you're from, the color of your skin, or even how many numbers you put up on the board. At the end of the day, it's about the positivity, the change, the morals, and the message that you're bringing to the very culture that positively changed your life. And by Kendrick doing just that, every step of the way throughout 2024, providing a brand new positive direction for the culture to grow and flourish in, is the very reason why the moves he's made has resulted in this becoming one of, if not the greatest, single year for any rapper in history.
There's a lot of little nuggets in both of their disses that if it wasn't for these breakdowns, and salute to guys like this, Rapaholics, because I think they directly get it.